Welcome back to the Angry Man Podcast with Jason and Greg. We have a special guest in the building. He's a true player in the media and entertainment industry with a career that's as diverse as it is impressive. From his early days writing compelling pieces for Playboy magazine to his pivotal role as a producer on the American Gangster series, his latest project, Born to Box, is a gritty examination of the sport of boxing from the perspective of the fighters, trainers, and boxing insiders. Join me in welcoming Mr. Curtis Scoon. Curtis, how you doing today?
Welcome.
I'm good, man. The Angry Man Podcast. That's exactly where I belong. Of course, I'm angry all the damn time.
Hey, it's interesting because my nickname in college was Angry Man. And Jason is, he is, people don't know this, but he is always angry. So the podcast is perfect for us.
Good.
Okay. Oh, man. So it's times 3 today. Let's get it.
Let's get it. So, again, welcome. So the Born to Box docuseries. So we've already started talking about that on the channel. I've had the opportunity to see some of the content, and personally, I think it's amazing. I've had the opportunity to do research on you. It's interesting because I had seen your face before. Not only that, I had seen all of, or I wouldn't say all of, but I was aware of some of your content already with American Gangsters, and your I think it was your Fat Cat book that I was also aware of. So
Curtis Supreme,
there you go, exactly. So it's interesting to be familiar with some of your work, know your face, but then not be able to tie those things together. So I hope that we'll also be able to shed some light on who you are. And we've had the opportunity to talk a little bit. One thing that I noticed about you is that you really have an interest in telling our stories from our perspective. And I feel like you have a real true passion in regards to that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, not just telling our stories, right? I'm going to tell you about that, but I want to make sure we're represented properly. And that's done in front of the cameras and behind the camera. As you can see today, I tapped in with you timely. I responded to you timely.
Facts.
See, it's not just for show. I want to set a standard that we all need to operate by. But telling our stories is really important. If you look at all of these documentaries that covered Black topics, whether it be Sandra Bland or the boy that got killed on Rikers Island, I forgot his name, Khalif Browder, I think is his name. It's like trauma porn, right? This white film crew, production crew, finds a tragic Black story and make a documentary about it that pretends to care about our plight, but it somehow is only valuable because it pushes their political agenda. And in other words, they have to benefit from it more than us. And that bothers me, because if there's anybody who should capitalize on our struggles, it should be us, right? I'm not calling these people racist or anything, because they'll say, if we didn't do it, who would do it? Take the Central Park 5 story. The reason why they did that documentary is because they were gearing up to frame Trump as a racist in the coming election. This is why it took so long, and they would pay millions of dollars to people just to reinforce that narrative. I mean, power is a hell of a thing, and we don't really understand that so much of what you see visually is nothing but propaganda. It could be some truth in there, but I always say that, truth is the foundation of all things, including falsehood. So you got to be careful not to let the lies slip in with the truth. So when I tell our stories, I try to get to the nitty gritty and expose things that would benefit us. I don't care if it benefits other people, but it should benefit us first and foremost. So that's the perspective that I bring as a filmmaker.
Excellent. Jay, you got a question?
No, I was just saying, I was just galvanized by what you were speaking on. I mean, everything comes from the truth, and then people go from there. You know, they have a little bit of truth just to get you in, and then they just take it however they want to create their narrative.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and even with Don King, right? There's a documentary made by Jack Newfield, and it was a total hit piece on Don King. It was made about 30 years ago. I think it was only in America or something to that. But if you put Jack Newfield in there, you could watch it. And man, from the beginning, and Don knew what they were doing. They were trying to tarnish his reputation, uh, assassinate his character, not because they have the moral high ground, but because they couldn't beat him fair and square. So and of course they had to turn black fighters and black people against him because that was his strength. That's how he got in the game in the first place. He connected with the fighters, who a lot of them back then tended to have, rough and tumble past, prison, juvenile, whatever. And he's a man who come from that. So of course they would feel more comfortable with him. I'm 59, and guys of my generation, I can't speak for the younger generation, but guys of my generation were often intimidated. They won't admit it in the presence of white folks. And it's because white people were always authority figures, whether it be educators, police officers, attorneys, landlords, judges, what have you. When you see somebody white, it's already conditioned in your brain to straighten up because this person has the key to your happiness, your freedom, and all these things. So Don, he offered a comfort level to the fighters that they weren't accustomed to getting. And I've said it on other podcasts. One of the fascinating things about Don is that no one talks about how he raised the pay scale for fighters. In 1974, he paid George Foreman and Muhammad Ali $5 million apiece, unheard of, especially for black fighters. The previous high was 2.5 million apiece paid to Ali and Joe Frazier in the fight of the century at Madison Square Garden. But that wasn't even done by a boxing promoter. That was done by Jack Kent Cooke, the owner of the Washington Redskins, because no boxing promoters had that kind of money to pay fighters, And then in 1982, Don King paid Larry Holmes and Jerry Cooney $10 million apiece. Now look at the two bookends I gave you. We talk about 1974, and then in 8 years he doubled what he did in 74, right? Meanwhile, in 1979, Marvin Hagler, who fought all his fights, I believe, from Bob Arum, he got $10,000 for the first time for his 50th fight. You see, and to me, I blame Bob Arum for all the bigotry that you see on display in boxing. He's the kind of guy that he doesn't believe blacks or Mexicans, the same Mexicans that cheer for him, he don't believe any of us should have too much money, right? He's from that frame of thought. So he will limit his own income just to make sure we don't get too much money that it can undermine his control. This is why Oscar, Floyd, Bud, everybody leaves Bob when they want to get paid. Bob can make money, but it's almost a sin for him to see somebody not white get that kind of money that Don was given. So when I hear people criticize Don, he was the best thing that ever happened to black fighters. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. Maybe he put his hand in the cookie jar or something, but man, there was more cookies in the jar because of Don too, and nobody talks about that. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we're not looking for perfection in boxing. Boxing is absolutely the red light district of sports. Absolutely. You know what I mean? When you get all of these guys, think about it. In Jack Newfield's documentary, and by the way, that's what made me a fan of Don King. I never paid him much attention until I saw that documentary. Because Jack Newfield made it clear that Don King had been charged with murder twice. The first time it was ruled self-defense, right? And the second time he got sentenced to 4 years on a Saturday with the prosecutor not present. And whatever strings he pulled. And Jack Newfield puts all of this on blast because he was working on behalf of Seth Abraham over at HBO. They were trying to rein Don in. When I interviewed his son, I haven't interviewed Don yet, but it's coming. And it won't be in the Born to Box series. It's going to be something else, right? They wanted to do TVKO with Bob Arum, Don King, and Seth Abraham, and I believe the Doovers. I'm not sure about the Doovers, but I do know those three names because his son told me. And Don wanted to do it, but he didn't want to include Mike Tyson. And that was the rift. Mm-hmm. And that was the rift. You see, because Lyndon Baines Johnson is famously quoted for saying, "Nothing angers a white man with a nickel more than to see a nigger with a dime." And that rings true. The biggest problem for a lot of these so-called boxing bigots, it isn't that they don't like black fighters. They don't like black people making money independently of them, not needing them, and most importantly, not giving them access to their fair share. And their fair share is going to be always more than ours, because that's the only way it's fair to them. You understand what I'm saying? And these are the discussions nobody's having. It has been swept under the rug. But keep in mind what Bob Arum's age is. He is 91 years old. And just a quick aside, right? You got to take all of this in consideration when you assess what people say and what they're bringing to the table. I own an outpatient mental health facility, right? So I hire psychiatrists and therapists and all that. My first doctor, his name was Dr. Joel Gans. He was a Jewish doctor out of Brooklyn, New York, but down here in DC. He was born in 1935. One day he was going to the back exit to get to his vehicle, and his bag was on the floor. He said, "Hey, Curtis, you mind getting that bag for me?" And you know what I told him? I said, "Doc, I know you was born in 1935, but a lot has changed since then," right? So this is the mindset of people from way back. They can't even help themselves, some of them, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that's just how they're accustomed to seeing black people in a subservient position, in a needy position. And it just bothers the hell out of them for us not to be that way. And God forbid we end up having more money than them.
Man, great points. And one thing I just want to point out that you said that resonated with me is the conditioning in terms of feeling like you are less than. Just from personal experiences, I grew up thinking white kids were smarter. You know, and a lot of people are not going to want to hear stuff like this, but I'm going to say this. I grew up thinking white kids were automatically smarter. I did not have an opportunity to go to college. I thought all those things. Get to middle school, and I'm sitting there in class, and the teacher's asking a question. I'm like, well, the answer is so-and-so, but if Rob, and I still remember the kid's name, Rob, if Rob doesn't know the answer, he's white, then the answer cannot be right. My answer can't be right. And sure enough, my answer was right. And continuously, the answer that I had was right. It took years for me to get to the point where I realized, wow, I'm actually intelligent. This stuff comes easy to me. And it's a shame that so many of us are conditioned that way. I mean, you know, we're another generation, so our kids won't be conditioned that way. But certainly I was, you know, so that really resonated with me.
The thing that I get from that is, see, I've always felt like I was intelligent, right? But what I had to realize is that Rob isn't always intelligent. You know what I mean?
Facts.
Like we, and this is why I say white privilege is getting the benefit of doubt, especially from black people. They don't understand the space they hold in our head, the psychological residue that exists within us from our experience with them. They don't understand because they weren't the ones who directly did it, right? But they benefit greatly from that, man. A lot of times. And being black means not getting the benefit of doubt, especially from black people.